May win the battle, but he ain't win the damn war.
Well, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another edition of 3 Wide. This weekend, the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series is at Martinsville Speedway for the first day out of 500. A race that many of us have been looking forward to ever since last year when we had our crazy finish when Chase Elliott got spun out by Denny Hamlin. We were all wondering if this race could live up to the expectations we all had set for it, and boy did it come through at the end. Throughout this race, it pretty much had everything. We had a leader get out way far in front, like 5 seconds, but then we'd get tracked down, we'd be able to get past. It wasn't like he hit a brick wall like we saw at Kansas. And as this race went along, the second line somewhat came in, which is something we haven't seen in Martinsville in a couple of years. Overall, in terms of playoff races so far this year, I think Martinsville's definitely in the top half, and it might be the top race. I'm not really sure. I think the Roval's still number 1. Martinsville's probably right around there, either 2 or 3. And in terms of the overall season, I think this is definitely a top 5, top 7 race. So with all that being said, we'll get into my 3 takeaways from the first day out of 500. Number 1, playoffers with bad performances. With the Cup Series playoffs moving to the round of 8 kicking off here at Martinsville, this is time for many of the teams that are in the round of 8 to put on their best performances of the year, and for some teams, this could be their worst performance of the year, especially in the playoffs so far. The first person I think who had a bad performance out of all the playoff drivers is someone that I feel like a majority of people picked to win this weekend, and that's Chase Elliott. It seemed like the 9 team could never figure out their car this weekend when they qualified in the mid-20s, but then when the failures from the inspection, he got moved up to the 19th position. And then as the race went along in stage 1, Chase Elliott finished 11th, earning no points. And then in stage 2, Chase Elliott finished in the 7th position, getting 4 points, which in normal playoff races is good, but with this being the round of 8 and being such a huge haul to the big 3 and others now, with the other points being awarded, this wasn't good for the 9 team. Then in stage 3, Chase ended up finishing in the 7th position, which is a nice rebound from how that car looked all weekend. But that car all weekend was just garbage. It was never in the top 5 at all during this race, and really looked like Chase could really never figure out what to do. He would try to move up, but really couldn't get into anything. And this will move on to my next driver who had a bad performance, and that's Kevin Harvick. Coming into this race in Martinsville, Kevin Harvick had a 39-point cushion on the people below the cut line. And in stage 1, Kevin Harvick finished in the 9th position, only earning 2 points. But then this is when Harvick's wheels essentially fell off. In the second stage, he went a lap down and he didn't get any stage points when he finished 15th. Harvick ended up somewhat rallying, getting a 10th place position, preserving his bloomin' onion streak for all the Outback fans out there. But this race for Kevin Harvick was a lucky you have those bonus points situation. If this was the old Chase system where we would reset everyone at the same amount of points, Kevin Harvick would be down below the cut line, probably looking up and trying to figure out how he can either win at Texas or Phoenix. But Harvick not doing so great here wasn't really a surprise to me. Going into this weekend's race, I thought 6 playoff drivers could really do some work here at Martinsville, and Kevin Harvick was one of the 2 drivers who I didn't mention because I don't think Kevin Harvick's really been that good at Martinsville. Yes, he has a win, but ever since that, I don't think he's really done too well at the track. So now on to the 3rd driver who struggled, and that's his teammate Eric Almirola. Eric Almirola was the 2nd driver who I didn't mention out of the playoff guys who I didn't think would do well here at Martinsville. Almirola in stage 1 finished 10th, which is only 1 point, and that would be all the points Almirola would gain besides his finishing position in this race, because in stage 2 he finished 12th. And once that second stage hit, it looked like Almirola's team really could never get a handle on the car, and he could never really pass anyone again. Almirola would end up finishing in the 11th position, the 2nd worst finish out of all the playoff drivers. With Almirola already being in a hole when this playoff round started, this did not help his cause, where he's now minus 50 and is pretty much in a must-win scenario. So now on to the 4th driver who struggled at Martinsville, and that's Clint Bowyer. Early on in this race, Clint Bowyer looked like he could maybe sweep Martinsville, and he looked like he had a really good long-run car. In stage 1, he ended up finishing 4th, which is 7 points to add to his total, which he was below the cut line going into this race. But then in stage 2, Bowyer would end up finishing in the 8th position, only getting 3 points to add to his total, and this looked like it was going to be the end of Clint Bowyer. But then in stage 3, Bowyer's car came to life for a little bit, where he was making passes and was a nice long run. But then there was caution after caution after caution, and Bowyer would start to fade. But then Bowyer's day would be done in by a spin, where he went into a turn 3 wide with Daniel Suarez and Jimmy Johnson, which then Jimmy Johnson got into Bowyer, sending him spinning, and this would effectively kill Bowyer's day right then and there. Bowyer would end up finishing in the 21st position, the worst out of all the playoff drivers. Now this definitely stings for Bowyer, as he was the worst finishing playoff driver, and he had probably had his hopes set very high for this race considering he won earlier there in the season. Now Bowyer will try to turn things around at Texas. So now on to number 2, Joey's jumping to Homestead. Going into this round of the playoffs, I thought Joey Logano would be the 4th guy in and surprise everyone, and maybe get some of that Penske magic to roll rub off on his car considering he was the only guy left. And at this race in Martinsville, it looked like the 22 team may have dipped into the 12 team and took his car from Martinsville and just tweaked on it and got it to work really well. Logano led a race high 309 laps, and I guess in his mind somewhat redeemed himself for the Matt Kenseth incident a couple years ago. But Logano getting this win didn't come without some controversy. After having a nice 10 lap or so battle with Martin Truex Jr. where it was pretty clean, they weren't really doing anything desperately to one another. Truex looked like he got the upper hand on Logano and was going to run away with this and get his first win on a short track in the Cup Series. But after he got the upper hand on Logano on the exit of turn 2 and fully cleared Logano would get in the back of Truex going into turn 3, but Truex would not spin around like Chase Elliott did last year. And then Logano would get into the side of Truex and they would bang, and then Truex would get sideways and Logano would keep his car somewhat straight and would end up getting the win with Denny Hamlin coming in second, Martin Truex Jr. finishing third. Okay, so right here I'm going to somewhat defend Joey Logano for what he did. Yes, this was a shot for Homestead and getting to the playoffs, and Logano knows what happened to him a long time ago that screwed him out of going to the Final Four. And Logano didn't really do anything too crazy here. Logano could have went into turn 3 and sent Truex into orbit, and Truex could have finished in like the 20th position, the last car on the lead lap, and would probably only be, I think, 6 points above the cut line right now and would be in a really hard position. But Truex kept the car somewhat straight and ended up getting third, which with his huge points cushion that he had going into this round of the playoffs wasn't that really bad of a day. But this is going to lead into number 3. Martin Truex Jr. is the new Chase Elliott. Yes, I said it. I think Martin Truex Jr. is going to have the kind of crowd on his side like Chase Elliott had, to a little lesser extent. But the same kind of passion the fans will show towards Truex for what just happened to him will be the same as what they showed to Elliott. Now, I think Martin Truex Jr. had every right to be mad after this race. If we just look at how Truex has driven throughout his years in the Cup Series, and especially this year, Truex is the last guy you should even be touching doors with or sending somewhat sideways considering how he's drove and what's happened to him this season. If we look at where Truex could have possibly dumped someone to get a win this season, Truex hasn't. If we just look to Watkins Glen, when Chase Elliott overcooked it going into turn 1, Truex could have kept going in there and then maybe dumped him going into the carousel if he just came just close enough, but he didn't. And then if we fast forward just a couple weeks later at Bristol, he had a good car and was going for his first short track win with Furniture Row Racing and his first short track win in the Cup Series. But what happened? Kyle Busch got into the back of him, spun him out, he crashed and was mad about that. But he didn't retaliate just yet, and he's really kept his cool and wasn't really going after Kyle Busch afterwards. And then we have the Roval. Truex, look, clearly set sail on to win at the Roval and was going to get a win to add to his already huge playoff bonuses. Then Jimmy Johnson came flying into that last chicane, smoked the tires, got sideways, think Truex is going to be fine. He's just minding his own business. Jimmy Johnson gets into the back of him and takes a win away from MTJ. And if we even think back to last year's Martinsville race when it came down between Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr., Martin Truex Jr. could have hooked a right into Kyle Busch and maybe got his first win at Martinsville and could have punched his way into Homestead there. But he didn't. He kept it clean. And as we know, Joey Logano hasn't really built up the equity with most drivers to where he's been knocking people around for years in the Cup Series. And that is why I stand on the Martin Truex Jr. side of this frustration fracas we have here after Martinsville. While I don't think it's as bad as the Chase Elliott incident, to where essentially Elliott went from the penthouse to the outhouse just like that, where he went from first to finishing in the 27th position. Now Truex was lucky he didn't get sent into orbit like I said earlier by Logano and ended up finishing in the 3rd position instead of 20th, to where he would be really close on that cut line in the playoffs. My current thoughts on Martin Truex Jr. are this. I feel like he's a more dominant version of Mark Martin in the recent years he's been driving, where if someone does little screws with this guy, we should be mad about this. He races everyone clean and hasn't really done anything to anyone. Just think about Martin Truex Jr. since he's joined the 78 team. When's the last time you were mad about Martin Truex Jr. after a race besides him smacking up the field or winning just his 25th race in a row or something? You haven't. Martin Truex Jr. is a consistently clean driver and has built up the equity with the rest of the field to where they know Martin's going to race me fine and I have nothing to worry about. And that's why I'm on the Truex side in this situation. He hasn't done anything to anyone and he continually gets screwed every single time. Take Watkins Glen out because he didn't really get screwed there. Chase had a better car, screwed up a little bit, and Truex had an open window but he didn't take it. That's whatever. But he got wrecked at Bristol. He was reminding his own business at the Roval and got taken out by Jimmy Johnson. If we think the last year's cutoff race at Richmond, he got taken out and ended up finishing in a bad position because of Denny Hamlin. This is why I'm all in on Martin Truex Jr. here. He has every right to jump Joey Logano if it comes to it at Homestead. Do I think Truex will do it? Probably not. But if he'll make it a more painful day, kind of like what Chase Elliott did to Denny Hamlin last year, where he put him in the wall and you had to sit there and think, oh, this car's going to break, this car's going to break, this car's going to break, boom, there goes your chances. I think that's exactly what he'll do to Joey Logano. So now with all that being said about Martinsville, we'll put Martinsville behind us and we'll look ahead to next week's race at Texas for the AAA Texas 500. Number 1, Kyle Busch looking for the sweep. Earlier in the year in Texas, Kyle Busch won the first race at Texas Motor Speedway, and now he's looking to sweep and punch his way to Homestead. As we saw earlier in the year at Richmond, he swept both of those races, and we'll see if Busch can keep his streak up and maybe sweep Texas just like he did Richmond. Now on to number 2. Playoffers looking to improve. Earlier in the year at Texas, some playoff drivers had a really rocky day. Martin Truex Jr. ended up finishing last, 37th position on the grid. If he does that again at Texas, he'll be all in to try to win at Phoenix to go to Homestead, because he'll more than likely be many points below the cut line. The next driver is Eric Almirola. Eric Almirola is minus 50 going into Texas, and it looks like he's going to need a miracle to move on. And if he does what he did at Texas earlier in the year, it's not going to cut it. He ended up finishing in the 32nd position, and he'll look to hopefully ride some momentum that he had in the early round into Texas to better his position. The next driver is Chase Elliott. Chase Elliott finished 11th at Texas earlier in the season. With his somewhat mediocre performance at Martinsville, he'll definitely have to better this performance, if not win, to have a nice chance to move on to the playoffs. The next one's Clint Boyer. Clint Boyer finished 9th, but with that spin at Martinsville, he's going to need some better improvement to move on. The other one is his teammate Kurt Busch, who finished 7th and is the top guy who's not in right now, but he's minus 25. Now, Kevin Harvick will look to better his position by 1. He finished 2nd at Texas, and looks like he can be the biggest competition to Kyle Busch at the track. And we don't really care about Joey Logano anymore because he's punched his ticket, but he finished 6th, and as we know, Kyle Busch won last year. So all these playoff guys will definitely pulling out all the stops at Texas to do a lot better than they did the first time around. Now on to number 3. Everyone's in a must-win scenario. Yes, barring some catastrophic failure from the top 3 who are still in by points and get knocked out in these playoffs, I think everyone below the cut line is definitely in a must-win scenario. If we just look at these points, Kurt Busch is in 5th, minus 25, and as we've seen from the top drivers in the playoffs so far, minus 25 is a pretty much must-win needing scenario to get in. Next is Chase Elliott, who's in 6th, minus 31. I definitely feel like 30 points, even with some catastrophic failures, is going to be really hard to overcome, and I definitely think Chase Elliott needs to go in a must-win scenario. Same thing for Clint Boyer. He's even further back, minus 42. Let's think of this. Even if Boyer wins the first 2 stages at Texas, he's still minus 22, not even factoring in where the other drivers are running. And making up 22 points on the other competitors is going to be a really hard task if he did win the first 2 stages at Texas, but he's still minus 42. A really huge hole to get out of. And lastly is Eric Almirola. Even if there is a huge strike of just awfulness for all these other playoff drivers and Almirola can still figure out a way to keep moving on and running in the race, he's minus 50. Now Almirola's team's going to have to do crazy strategy or something, because I don't see where he can gain 50 points on these guys that he's trying to catch up to. And if we look at how he did earlier in the year at Texas, as I just stated, he finished in the 32nd position. That's not really going to help, and he's definitely, I think, essentially the only guy really in a must-win scenario, but I definitely think these 4 guys who are out need to win to get in. So I'll do it for this week's edition of 3 Wide from Martinsville and what to look ahead to at Texas. So with all that being said, just a little quick video scheduling thing. This Wednesday at 2 o'clock, I'll be releasing my Crown Jewel WWE predictions. So yep, come back around Wednesday at 2 o'clock for that. So I'll do it for this video. If you like the video, hit the like button. If you like what I'm doing on this channel and want to see more, hit the subscribe. And as always, thanks for watching.